Hi, welcome and thank you for joining us at Miscellany, a storytelling showcase. Before we begin our performances, I would just like to acknowledge that we are on the land of the River Murray and Mallee peoples, and I pay respects to everyone here and to elders past, present and future, and acknowledge that this land was and will always be traditional Aboriginal land. There will be a 15-minute break about halfway through the night, and the bar will be open for your snacking needs. So about this event, Write SSA, with the support of the Restart Investment to Sustain and Expand Fund, or the RISE Fund, developed the No Limits Young Regional Writers Program. Our local No Limits team, Alicia, Kirste and Eliza, support the development of the regional young South Australian writers. The No Limits team employs diverse authors to present skills-based writing workshops, commissions literary work by young regional writers, and connects young authors to publishers and industry representatives. And they also present showcases like what we're doing here tonight. Miscellany is an event produced by the No Limits team in collaboration with Writers SA. So let's get into it, shall we? Our first performance tonight is Joey Haenen with Catherine Hoytson-Roeder. Joey is 17 years old and is in final year of high school. His passion is performing and writing, and most recently creating his own cabaret show in part of the Adelaide Cabaret Festival. He's won the National Schools Poetry Competition and is in the midst of recording his first single to be released later this year. Tonight he'll be performing his cabaret piece Home with the help of Catherine Hoytson-Roeder on the piano. Let's give it a
Devin's a bit shorter than me. You're alright. Alright, so as Devin said, my name's Joey, and I'm going to do a little piece for you that I'll be doing in a couple weeks' time at the Adelaide Cabaret Festival. I'll just move this one out of the way. Hi, my name's Joey, and I'd like to tell you a story about my grandfather, Hassan Kara Ali. At the age of 19, he moved to Australia by himself on a big jet plane with just the clothes on his back and 10 pounds to his name. There was no why, but it was either here or Canada, and Canada was far too cold. He's here today, and with more than what he first came here with, a story to tell. My old grandpa, born in Lebanon, to a single mother, only 10, he worked in the factory, providing for family. The factory was in the heart of Beirut, French polishing by day and at night serving the American sailors in the bar. He knew how to open a beer before he knew how to ride a bike. And if you have questions about hard work or what family means, you just ask my grandpa. Home had nothing for him. 15 moved abroad on a whim. Time is a traveller, my old grandpa, turn your head. From Lebanon to Syria, Austria, then England with no plan ahead. He did all this travelling with his friend Fouad, who he'd met in Syria. For 5 years, Fouad was his one constant among the continual change in landscape and women. They were just two boys, sometimes surviving on only the nourishment of each other's companionship. One friend was made, but 1,000 memories of back home were lost in the lavish lifestyle he was living. And the physical distance too grew only further between my grandfather and his family when he left England and started packing his bags, gone away to a place where the weather's warm. Australia, there's no need for him in Europe no more. Finding some work in Adelaide, he begins a new life and even manages to get his high-profile next-door neighbour Don Dunstan at his 21st. He builds a family. He settles down with a girlfriend, Kimber, who has a heart as gold as the dirt she was raised on. They build a family together with 2 little girls and a house in Redwood Park. But back in Lebanon, there was a mum unsure of where her little boy was. Her frail body living on only 1,000 memories of her son. Back home, she was crying. You can reach me by railway. You can reach me by trailway. You can reach me on an airplane. You can reach me with your mind. You can reach me by caravan. Cross the desert like an Arab man. I don't care how you get here, just get here if you can. Oh, there are hills and mountains between us, always something to get over. If I had my way, surely you would be closer. I need you closer. 30 years later, the government was selling up and Telstra shares were a good investment. Being a good provider for his family, he bought his daughter 1,000 shares and registered his name on the public list. His name was seen by a young Lebanese man working for Telstra by the name of Udhud Kara Ali. Udhud had not seen this oh-so-familiar name in Australia before, and so he decided to reach out and ring Mr. Hassan Kara Ali. From that phone call, the word was spread that my grandfather was alive and well in Australia. The phone was hardly put down as Kara Alis from around the world called him to say, I'm your family. But there was still one last reconnection he needed to make. And for that, he needed to go back home. The willow that I used to climb may bend a little more. The paint may all be peeling off the front porch and the door. No matter what, I'm heading back and whistling as I go. For better or for worse, it's still the only home I know. Once he touched down, my grandpa saved half a lifetime lost with an embrace that felt longer than the time he'd been away. There was closure for my grandpa's story in his mother's arms. So let his life be a lesson as it is mine. Do you need to find closure? Is there family you need to reconnect with? And although they might be around the corner, will you all take a trip to Lebanon too? A fireplace, a gentle face, a warm and friendly glow. Please let it be the way it was, the only home I know. The only home I know.
Sorry. Thank you, Joey and Catherine. That was very touching. Thank you. Next up, we have Fleur Kilpatrick. Our next performance is from RYT's Fleur. Fleur is an award-winning playwright, educator, and theatre director. Now she is a creative producer at RYT and holds a postgraduate diploma of directing and a master's in playwriting. She has been making theatre for 18 years and still thinks it's the best of jobs. Please welcome up Fleur.
I really like that job title, Devin, of just RYT's Fleur. That's great. I usually go with boss lady. The first lesson is also the last. I tell my students that the history of music theatre is essentially the history of 20th century America, a time of massive social and political upheaval. It is the history of an art form responding or failing to respond to the moment it was created in. And I wonder if my hands are shaking. It is March 2020. We lay out butcher's paper on the floor and I assign groups of students to each decade, and we draw out a timeline of the 20th century with wars fought, abortions legalised, rights given and taken away, free education given and taken away, recession, musical theatre and disease all laid out together. And then the email comes in and everything grinds to a halt. Months later, Lena, one of my students, writes to me of their memories of that moment. You said we will do this. You said I don't know a lot, which was good because otherwise we wouldn't have believed you. You said here is what I don't know and here is what I do know. You said we will find new ways, and we all left confused, hoping to be back in the room in a few weeks. July 2020. We aren't back in the room. But by semester 2, we have learnt a lot. Breakout rooms are our friends, emojis are our friends, the chat bar is our friend, polls are our friends, students being friends are our friends. I don't pretend that I'm teaching from behind a podium or in a lecture theatre. I usually lecture from the kitchen, often while cooking. My lecture explaining why Maria from The Sound of Music is a lesbian icon despite being married off into heterosexual motherhood is paired with a tip that adding a parmesan rind to your soup will really enhance the flavour. Behind the scenes, I do draft after draft of the semester. Firstly, it's all online, and then I get the go-ahead to alternate weeks, 1 week online, 1 week off. And I actually am really excited about the pedagogical challenge of this. What is worth my students' time? What is worth them coming into the university? What is worth the risk of coming into the university? But then we go to the next lockdown and we have 6 weeks online, and then we go to alternating weeks, and then the alternating weeks go, and then we're into 2 hours optional every fortnight of in-person, and then that goes too. Behind the scenes, nope, I've done that. I strain both my rotator cuffs in my shoulders, hunching over my laptop, and I teach with heat packs sticking out from under my jumper like giant shoulder pads. I have a panic attack on the floor under my desk. I so badly want to be the certainty that my students need, but it is hard. The first day of semester 2, 2 new students joined my tight-knit music theatre cohort. I take them into a breakout room to catch them up on the actual subject matter, and I leave the class with the challenge to, in 45 minutes, create a performance that updates the students on all the in-jokes. Tara and Eliza, I tell them, the most important thing to know is that you are doing something that no one has ever done before. You are studying musical theatre online during a pandemic. We are working it out together, but you need to know that I'm here for you as students, as artists, as young people navigating a pandemic. September 2020. A student confesses that they're anxious. I talk constantly about how everything we put on stage is a political choice, and her play just isn't political. Will I hate it? Will I mark her down? I tell her that this year, 2020, to entertain, to make people feel great, is one of the greatest ambitions an artist can have, and that to choose joy is political and necessary and generous. I remember that. I remember my phone ringing as I sign off from class. It's bad news, I'm afraid. The head of the school tells me that she and the other permanent staff had just had a meeting with the dean where they were told that 4 of the 5 of them would need to take voluntary redundancies. Not me. I'd been on yearly contracts for the last 5 years, so I'd just be gone when my contract ran out in November. The whole school was being disestablished. By that night, the students have formed a committee to save the course and the staff. One of my first years puts up his hand to join, and he gestures at the screen and said, "This is the only university I've ever known. Fleur's armchair and kitchen, that's Monash to me." And it hits me like a brick, because holy shit. In 2020, we are each running our own tiny universities. My colleagues and I are floating on these rafts, facing wave after wave of change. And in my mind, I see us just drifting further and further apart, but lecturing the whole time, because we are lecturing like it still matters. And it does. We are lecturing like lives depend on it, and they do. The loss and the grief doesn't bring those rafts back closer together, though. We just keep right on drifting, and we are telling students different things depending on our interpretations of emails from management. I told them that if they wanted to be artists, they could still be artists, I earnestly tell a colleague one night. I told them that the uni would make sure that they would finish their degrees. "Really?" he said. "Because I told them it was all fucked and they were going to be collateral damage of the bureaucratic machine." There's an age-old link between theatre and activism. As I teach shared grief through ancient Greek theatre, community, rules through medieval mystery plays, colonial imperialism through Shakespeare, and the power of joy through musical theatre, I marvel at the generation of activist theatre makers I raise and the care that is at the core of all their practices. The students fight so hard for each other and for us. Their campaign reaches the floor of Parliament. It embarrasses the powerful and empowers their fellow students. By the end of semester, they are setting up an advisory committee for students from other schools, so that no one will have to start a campaign from scratch like they did. But November 2020, they knew their campaign was over, and so was their course and our jobs. In my last lesson, I stare into the zoomy depths of my screen and I say, "Let's make theatre." I say, you can write stage directions in the chat bar or dialogue for others. I'm going to give you some directions and some lines to work with or to finish. I say, Freya, can you please be our sound designer? Please choose the soundtrack. Everyone else, you have 1 minute to assemble your costume. This play is going to be in 3 acts. Act 1 is called Meet the Crew. The stage directions. Start with your face off screen. Find a creative way to appear. Introduce yourself and your costume. You can say yes, know each other's names, and you can laugh. We laughed a lot. Act 2 is called Where We Thought We Were Going. Share an image on your screen from January. It's smoke. From February. Hope. March. It's those timelines of the 20th century spread out on that classroom floor that we never saw again. April. It's mostly memes. May, it's a kick line on Zoom with all their smiling faces at the top and below all these fingers as legs. I say, you can finish this sentence. This year I became. I say, you can say, but then fuck. Act 3 is called Gifts. Make predictions for each other. Freya and Tara will become arts and education activists. Lena, a disability advocate. Eliza and Darby are totally going to get together when they meet in person. The students will never forget this year and the joy and community we've created. The students will never forget this year and the way that their university devalued their achievements, their education and their art form. I say you can say something that you're grateful for or proud of. I am proud of and grateful for the young people I taught. 5 years, 600 to 700 students, all taught with immense care, love and community. They are artists, activists, makers, teachers, carers, passionate, kind and generous people. I say you can applaud, you can bow, you can find a way to leave the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fleur. Our next performer is Jess. Jess Weidenhofer is a 27-year-old non-binary creative from Brahma. They work on, and the work they produce often centres around themes of self-preservation and healing from trauma. Jess recently has written for This Breath, a writer's essay, and this year's Waikerie River Fringe. And last year they presented for the Riverland Pride March. Welcome on board, Jess.
Hi, friends. I'm going to sing some songs for you that I've written recently. And I hope you all know that I have a nervous bladder, so the entire time I'm up here, I really need to pee. This one's called Man on the Moon. Self-doubt takes over when I am dead sober. Life is but a dream, sipping blood and swimming upstream. I heard that the man on the moon, in fact, isn't there. He lost his rocket fare under immense pressure, living in an ether. They want me to fit, but it's only for their benefit. I heard that the man on the moon, in fact, isn't there. He lost his rocket fare. He lost his rocket fare. Used to being in fight or flight. Meditation leaves me uptight. No longer friends with deja vu. Images of red, purple, and blue. I heard that the man on the moon, in fact, isn't there. He lost his rocket fare. 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 Thank you. I'm also not very used to hearing my voice through a microphone. It's very different. I'm not sure if you guys have ever sung in a microphone, but it's hard. This one's called Rabbit Hole. Drag me by the hair on my head. Got no strength left to fight back anyway. Don't call me while I'm hiding away. That's what my demons say, but I think they're wrong.
I am falling down a rabbit hole. Got nothing to slow me down, no one to hold. Please take me home. Pull me into a transformation. She calls me resilient. Rebirth is fatal. Time flies when you have no tether. Still feels like forever, and no one knows I'm gone. I am falling down this rabbit hole. Got nothing to slow me down, no one to hold. Please take me home. I am falling down this rabbit hole. Got nothing to slow me down, no one to hold. Please take me home. I am falling down this rabbit hole. Got nothing to slow me down, nothing to hold on to. I am safe at home.
Thanks. This one's called Get Out.
Get out of my head. You should have made your bed when you lie. Why so mean all the time? Think you've got to walk the line, then you die. How can I make up for lost time? Now you've seen she isn't me. Get out. You think you're so cool. I think you're an emotionally stunted fool. Take responsibility. Quit acting like a fucking baby. This is everything I feared, that it'd make you cry through her eyes. Get out. Get out. Get out.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jess. Keep an eye on Jess. They've been doing their own open mic nights with Bright SSA and Part of Things. The next one is set for Friday the 24th of June. So mark that in your calendars. We will now begin our 15-minute break. So everyone enjoy themselves and we'll be back soon. Welcome back, everybody. And yep, get settled, because next we have Stuart. Stuart is an educator, writer, and a gamer. He usually writes science fiction and fantasy, however, not always. He sometimes writes poetry about life. He sometimes writes about writing. And lately he's been writing a lot of tabletop games. But for tonight, he has something special. He is presenting his first chapter of his work in progress novel.
Hello. I'm going to make this a little bit taller. Hang on a sec. Hello, I'm Stuart. I'm going to be reading something that I wrote last year and stuck in a drawer until about a month ago. Mild content warning on this. There's some swearing and a little bit of violence, and there's mention of terrorism, but it's not a war story, even though that content warning sounds like it is. This is called Headwind. Prologue. You're about to read a story. It might seem like nonsense. It might seem as if it is made up and all these random events were invented just for entertainment's sake, that they're lies, but they aren't. This isn't quite a coming-of-age story, nor is it a science fiction or fantasy or romance or any number of other genres. Not quite. It's a little bit of all of them. I'll be trying to remember everything exactly as it happened, to the best of my ability. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for all of it. But I have it on good authority that it really happened, and that the events discussed in these pages changed the course of history. This is exactly the sort of thing that someone like you would love to read. I'm sure of that. This story is set during 2001, so please do not laugh at their music, clothes, or slang. It was how we lived back then. It starts a few months before the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and things were different. I grew up where this story takes place. It was a good place to grow up. I had a fairly wholesome childhood. It had the right mix of people, just enough poor households to make you appreciate what you had, but just enough rich ones to make you embarrassed about your shoes. The ocean was always present. I never swam in it, but it was there. The Norfolk pines that line the foreshore still give me a sense of safety when I see them. Those giants have seen everything that has happened on the Lefevre Peninsula for over 100 years. Huge, impartial onlookers. Bystanders to the horrors and celebrations that have been had on the edge of those waters. If you haven't visited this little part of South Australia, that is fine. The story does not rely on it. The names and people and places have been changed to protect the innocent, for the most part anyway. Part 1, Into a New World. Suspension. A headwind. Luke had a headwind every single day of his high school career. While riding his bike from Largs Bay to Taparoo High School, or Ocean View as it is now named. In fact, it was called that in 2001 too, but the locals were still in denial. In the afternoon, he was greeted with the same headwind. Sometimes it could be quite mild, but more often than not, it would be a blustering gale force pushing against him. He had toyed with all sorts of alternatives to avoid this wind. Taking a complicated network of back streets was the most common but highly time-consuming. He had, from time to time, taken his bike on the train, but this was a risky move. The possibility of there being a ticket inspector was high, but the possibility of some fucker trying to roll you and take the bike was much higher. Luke had encountered both. So, on this day, like most days, he pedalled headfirst into the wind along the seafront. It was cold, and the thick clouds lumped high out over the Gulf. These rides gave him time to think, time to unwind over the day's events, as there were many, many events each day at school. Like all teenagers, These events were either catastrophic or unimportant. The emotions of a teenager are impeccably difficult to predict, understand, or control. It is best not to attempt these things. Luke thought about the punch that broke Dooney's nose. John Muldoon was in the year above him and a real rough nut. As soon as his knuckle connected with the tip of Dooney's nose, he knew it was broken. He also knew he would have to deal with Dooney's mates, as well as deal with how his own mates would react. What Luke didn't know was that Mr. Peters was standing in the hallway, watching the whole thing unfold, and therefore wound up suspended for the rest of the week. Dad didn't answer the phone when the school called. Dooney had written over a piece Luke had done on the side of the red deli. Luke had spent a month getting the colours he wanted, drawing up the letters and organising with Margie, the lady that ran the deli, to do the wall. It took a whole weekend to finish, and when he was done, Red Deli was spray painted over the wall in red, white, blue and black. A piece of art. That's what it was. And fucking Dooney had it tagged right over the top of it with Dunes. The problem was that Dooney was older, hung out with some of the baddest on the peninsula, and knew how to fight really well. Luke had weighed all the evidence and decided it was best to try and fight him anyway. Even if he lost, people would have known he stood up for himself. But he didn't lose. He dropped Dooney like a sack of shit, with blood pissing out of his nose, and even made the older boy cry. But Dad didn't answer the phone. Luke now faced problems on numerous fronts. Firstly, when he got home, his dad would be there. His dad would have listened to the message on the answering machine and he would know what Luke had done. His dad wasn't the most understanding of people, especially when it came to fucking up at school. You see, Luke's dad hated his job. He blamed the fact that he had to work in manual labour on not doing well at school. So, Luke's dad believed all his kids should go to school, do really well, and then go to university. This meant that every time Luke got in the shit at school, it was a very serious problem. Secondly, his dad will know that the fight at school was not because of an argument over football, as Dooney and Luke had lied and told the school. Luke didn't play football. Luke's dad knew this and therefore will start asking questions as to why he was fighting, which eventually would lead to the discussion about graffiti. He could already hear his dad yelling again. Thirdly, Dooney would not take this lightly. He would want to save face and get some revenge. He'd tell his mates and they'd want some too. These blokes never quit. They never let it lie. They never let anyone else win. Dooney will be pissed. His mates will be ripping on him, giving him shit about being decked by little Lukey Castle. Luke knew he'd have to manage that when the time comes too. At least it's only Tuesday, Luke thought. I've got 3 full days till the weekend, 5 days till I have to go back to school. Luke cast his eye out over the ocean. He used to love swimming in the ocean when he was a kid. He'd be down there every day in summer, and every day his dad would let him in winter. He hadn't walked along the beach or swam in the water for, well, he couldn't remember the last time he had. The clouds were heavy now, looming over the beach, preparing to drop their burden on the little folk that scurried about their days. Only going to get yelled at home, Luke thought. I'll just pop down for a bit. Luke stashed his bike in one of the bushes at the top of the dunes and looked down at the steps that led to the water. They were old now. The cracks in the concrete were deeper, thicker, and there were even chunks broken off. The wooden railing was just barely intact, having been disintegrated by the salty air coming in off the sea. He descended slowly to the soft sand, and as his feet touched down, he began that familiar and awkward walk towards the waves that lapped at the shore. The Gulf of St. Vincent was not wide. It had almost no surf. But the beaches were beautiful, the sort of beaches you see on advertisements for holidaying in Australia. White sands and turquoise waters framed by Norfolk pines and early 20th century houses. There were bouts of seaweed occasionally, but generally the water was lovely and calm, except when a storm was brewing, like today. The waves were larger than usual, and the wind was beginning to pick up and pelt the shore. Not so much that Luke couldn't walk beside it and not get wet, but it was almost there. Luke looked south towards the Semaphore jetty. He'd seen photos of it from the olden days when it was twice as long and had shops on it. His dad told him there were even trams or trains or something that were allowed to go on there too. You could still see parts of the old tracks at the start of the jetty. Apparently, the jetty had come down in a storm. Luke had loved the idea of seeing that happen. It's funny how your mind goes to thoughts like these when there's so many other pressing matters waiting to be dealt with. Survival mechanisms are wonderful things. Luke's right foot kicked something stuck in the ground and he tripped, sprawling over the firm, wet sand near the water. He looked about to see if anyone had witnessed his tumble to the ground. A teenager self-conscious knows no limits. Once he was sure no one saw and his pride was still intact, he checked to see what had displaced his thoughts and his body. Sticking up out of the sand was the top of an old glass bottle. The old piece of cork jammed in the mouth looked ancient and crumbling. Luke tried to pull the bottle from the sand, but it wouldn't budge. He got on his knees and dug it out. Soon he realised it was too hard to remove. The bottle was long and narrow, longer than the ruler in his pencil case. After a few minutes of digging, he was able to pry it from the sand. It was long and thin and oval-shaped. The bottom of it was curved, and the top curved in until it got to the long, narrow neck. He shook it. There was something inside. He scratched at the cork, but it just fell apart and blew into the wind. Need a bottle opener, he thought. Swiss Army knife. As Luke stood, the wind picked up. A powerful gust pushed at his back and sprayed him with water. Luke turned to look at the ocean one last time before heading home. The clouds had darkened. They looked full and heavy and seemed to be leering over him. He saw lightning spark and crackle deep inside the bloated clouds and waited to hear the thunder. It exploded in his ears and rattled in his chest. He was sure it had vibrated the ground he stood on. Luke had never heard thunder like that, but he would hear it again. Thank you.
We now welcome Britnie to the stage. And although she doesn't call herself a writer or a poet, she is talented nonetheless. She is a mum of 3 beautiful hurricanes and is praying for her sanity daily. She lives in activewear and gets through the day with a little bit of luck, sarcasm, and a whole lot of coffee. She is an extremely passionate feminist and very chatty and loves TV and films. She is performing tonight because she is trying to teach her loved ones to get out of their comfort zone and try new things.
Take a breath. It might be the last one you take. The air of desolation is sponged out by blackest black smoke and red skies growing darker. A storm is coming and clouds careen like fingers, filling the intoxicating space which seemed to go forever and now seems so finite. Breathe out, darling. A storm is coming, breaking through the hot, choking air that looms over. Once wildness and fury and running through lands of sand and rain and grass, now isolation, solitude. Thick and blood red, tasting more and more of guilt with every swallow, sharp like the point of a blade, breaking the skin, spilling and spitting, fierceness and frenzy pouring out, a protruding dagger from an open wound, draining all what once was, and now she can't breathe. Breathe in. Breathe out. It played with her, teased an ending and a beginning. A tempest and a downpour comes to quench the blaze, leaving gnarly, strangled trees, fractured violence, half-spilled blood, devastated revelation. Her devastation. Begetting the tears from her eyes like the razored edges of the storm, clinging to something that used to smell and taste so sweet, but now sours in her mouth. Anger? No. Pain? No. Breathe in. The pain is the fear made solid and thick and raw, and fear seeps out of the cuts and nicks, sculpting anger red, hot and greasy, slick. Anger so hot it fizzles and spits blue and red, scalding like butter from a pan. Words from the mouth that cut and slice like dirty iron anguish. It is the feeling of being angry and sad and in pain and sick and tired and silent. Tired like the exhaustion that finds the blackness of both eyes and knuckles in the half-light like violence, brutality, scolding and powerful viciousness sits on your lips and gut and heart like tar. No cure, grating at the smile that carries it in silence. Gagging and putrefying radiance, holding space for what was, what could be, what will never be, should be, or can be, ever again. Pain is white hot and screaming through bald fists and broken promises that made new will be broken again. Breathe out. Sadness comes like waves. Tightness in a chest that fear holds subsides to make room for what is ugly and soft. Sadness. Blacker than the clouds that threaten the land on which you stand, your stoic heels. She makes the breath sluggish and painful like ash in her mouth. A smile too heavy and too soon, and the laughter too much to bear. Altogether, too much. Again. Breathe in. Breathe out. Fight back. Run faster. Turn back. Go back. Stay together. Stay alive. Anguish is the silence deep within greying clouds of a storm as it grows. Thunder pounds like fists on raw iron bars. The prisoner shriek, living in her ribcage, sensations of life begging to break free but cannot. She cannot breathe. Breathe in. Power. Empower, overpower. Infinite in that power. Power, powerful. Present, presence, peace. A breath held underwater. If the thunder comes, then so too does the lightning. Breathe in. The force and the words and the pain and the pounding can't be stopped once it's begun. The vice grip of anguish holds the sounds back, and so too the lightning. The words are fire, unstoppable, destructive, daring, devastating. Darling. The silence screams and fills choking lungs to spill forth from empty lips. Overflowing smoke in the lungs of the animals and the trees, and the one who wants to run but knows they have to stay. Stand in the darkness and in the pain, in the smoke through the front while it passes, burns over. Breathe out. Breathe in. Linger in the haze and the fog that remains when the storm is over. When the violent anger and the pain subside and the smoke remains. The charred earth blackening where what is left becomes a bruise, becomes a scar. Take a breath.
Our final performance for the night is a guest from the outer Adelaide area, Maddie. Maddison Nyp is an aspiring author from the Highland Valley. She is a novelist, scriptwriter, and lyricist, with experience in directing and music. She has written several productions for a local school community and enjoys seeing her projects come to life. Maddison has worked with Write SSA and on their This Breath commission and is excited for the new opportunities for 2022.
Hello, thank you guys for having me. It's my first time in the Riverlands and I can't think of a better reason to be here. So I'm reading 2 short stories tonight. My first piece was for This Breath and it's unpacking the themes of isolation in 2020. I keep a chain around my wrist. She's decorated in rust and flecks of silver, and whenever I move, she slowly bleeds the ground red. When I reach my hands above my head, she screams until I sheepishly lower them, and we force this neutral coexistence. Tonight I dangle my feet in the water. The moon's glow casts a harsh portraits of tree onto the rivers, and I watch as thin leaves dance sorrowfully with the wind. It's a clear evening. Stars like cat's eyes are pinpricking this night sky. If I squint, I can see the river churning through the ground, darting into the night like a frightened snake. A faint smell of storm clings to my nose, and I wonder, when the rain drags me into the river, will my chain float or sink? Next to me sits a radio, slowly melting into the mud as he screeches out 9 news. Like the chain, he's all peeling paint and exposed metal, with a crooked antenna his flailing limb. When the water knocks on our door, he'll certainly drown too. Maybe that's why he sings so bitterly. He clears his throat. Tonight on 9 News, 20 dead in hospital, another 60 tomorrow. Workers strike in Sydney from digging 4'1" graves. Old Mother Earth is getting too hot. Back in the 10s, when Apocalypse was only the title of Hollywood's newest feature, I avoided the riverbanks. Instead, I'd sit inside, waiting patiently for the future I gleaned from teen magazines. And I was a reckless, beautiful young thing, unaware of the chains that provoked the sound of thunder. But then the sick started dying, and the world started ending, and I moved to the riverside. I think tomorrow isn't going to come, I say to the radio host. My voice feels rasp, aching from this age of isolation. You have to hope that it will, the radio barks. Look around you, this is not a dying world. Do you truly believe it's ending? The storm cracks on the horizon. The radio gulps, and I stare at the mud. Hope is a luxury, I tell the radio, feeling my chain nod in agreement. What good is there in fighting for something so penniless? Hope is a human condition, replies the radio host. You are compelled to hope. As you are to swell your feet in the river, you don't have to be chained to this fear of an end. Glancing down at the river, I flex my legs, feeling the water lap at my skin. There's a certainty to the end. The chain pleads for it, the radio preaches it, and I sit, debating my position. Who am I to hope for a pleasant future, to self-sabotage, to make the end so much more painful? But then again, what if I'm wrong, to accept this chain as one would an abusive lover? What if tomorrow comes? Perhaps there is something in the future, something more worthy than waiting for flooded rivers. I find myself looking around at the world. The water whispers as it races down the stream, and bugs listen as they flirt with shrubs and bushes. Mud purrs underneath my fingers and parts as I draw strange patterns. A warm night's breeze ruffles my clothes, musing my hair and distorting the radio's voice. The air feels alive. Her song's so much sweeter than what the radio preaches. Maybe there is life beyond the end of the world, if I dare hope for it. I pull my feet out of the water, wincing as they ache from misuse. Deer-like I stand and slowly unwind the chain from my arm. She uncoils in thick chunks, and I struggle to lift her before releasing her into the water. She lets out a gurgling sound like an aged opera singer taking her final bow. Stepping backwards, I turn before she hits the riverbed, away from the storm and snarking water. Mud clings to my feet and my legs shiver, but the night air pats my back, and I find myself smiling. Unburdened by an attachment to the end, my wrist suddenly feels softer, almost alive once again. A standing ovation tricks from the radio. I pick him up, happy to have him live on my porch. We may coexist. Before I can change my mind, I march to the house, because regardless of tomorrow, I am here today, and the world doesn't end, it just feels like it does. There might still be hope. Thank you. This second piece was written for one of my classes at Flinders, and mild trigger warning for blood and a bit of the use of a gun. Righteous. With a gun on your hip and the stars as your guide, you walk towards a forest. Your village bobs above the sea line, a small blur of colour alone in the inky night. It's a mess of houses and uneven pathways, jittered out of the earth as if carved by a cruel god. Each home has seen age, with their worn-down windows and broken doors. Beyond the village is a short breath of wilderness, then the forest, where trees are too thick and animals often howl hymns. The townspeople built barricades on the village outskirts long ago in order to keep the monsters out. Those who've lived in the village longest often warn they are not enough. Tonight, it's those village outskirts you head towards. You walk on the edge of a cliffside, the memory of bodies splattered like spilt wine across weather-torn rocks fresh in your mind. The wind whispers, and the smell of sea salt stains your nose and rocks your teeth. Not too far away is the start of a forest. The trees rise and twirl like dancers, silhouetted by the soft glow of the moon. You're no longer a child, but you swear there's something with ruby red eyes hidden amongst the leaves. This mind of yours is a fickle fiend. There's a gun on your hip. It's rusted and bruised. Age seeps into its trigger and hull. It's a soft crest on your leg, a bloody reminder of why, of all places, you found yourself alone on a cliffside at midnight. It was the mayor who gave you the gun. There are monsters in the woods, he whispered. They have weapons that'll bury your family and burn your village. You like the mayor. His eyes are beady and pale, and his fingernails crisp. Like your village, he's weathered by age, and sometimes you swear he's unraveling at the seams. But you respect the mayor. When illness came to your village, it was his hand that shielded you. When he called you to his table, presented you with a gun, and told you of national righteousness, you listened. You listened with wide eyes. You hear a whisper in the grass, a shadow of movement. Instinctively you duck, hands fumbling over the gun like a vicar going to pray. Shouldering the heavy metal, you point into the grass. It's silent for a moment. Your fingers curl possessively around the trigger as you shake. It's only a monster, you remind yourself. Only a beast of the night, one you needn't fear. Mindlessly, you wonder if the creature's blood runs black. That's what, in your books, that's what you've heard of monsters. Black and acidic. Yes, you are righteous. There's an eye in the grass. It makes your breath hitch, and your fingers tighten. It opens slowly, revealing a crisp blue ocean with dots of yellow, a small boat bobbing out to sea. The eye stares at you, and you stare back. Square your shoulders. Close your eyes. Pull the trigger. The gun bucks wildly into your shoulder. A fickle scream pierces the air. Your eyes snap open, and on instinct you stand, shouldering the gun and positioning it towards the ground. The monsters have pointed teeth, the mayor told you, his eyes ducked and fixed on the floor. He never met your eyes, the mayor. The monsters will invade our lands and bury your riches and burn your sanity. There's no movement in the grass. Did you kill it? You must have. You wish you had a lamp. The grass is too still, like a mountain lion waiting to pounce. But there's no flash of scarlet, no hopeless pouring out the dirt, no raspy final breaths. Is that all it takes to kill a monster? Surely they are stronger than a few bullets. Something's watching you. A rustle of movement from behind is all it takes for you to spin when a body smashes into yours. Air whishes in your lungs as you fly, the ground smacking your shins. Your eyes meet the grass, pain blooms in your elbow. You dart up and wildly look around. Nothing. You realize you've dropped your gun and blindly reach towards the floor, hating the exposure of your back. In the distance, the grass parts and you look up. There, movement. Sprinting through the grass towards the tree line. Find your gun, there, a few paces from where you fell. Thank your God it didn't go off. Sling it over your shoulder and start to run. Your breath comes in quick waves and the gun bites at your shoulder. Faintly, you can make out the monster. It sprints from side to side, animalistic and alien. Grass whips at your leg, but the view of the monster, stumbling and swaying, is the only motivator you need. That and the knowledge that you are righteous, sprinting through the night with a brazen smile on your lips. The monsters take from our land, the mayor declared, snapping at his advisors with unexpected bravo. They will unearth your secrets, but bury your home and burn your ambition. The monster hits a tree line. You dart after it, feeling the nakedness of the moon bounce away from your back. You are swallowed up by the forest as you sprint, determined not to give up your chase. Oak giants blur past you, tall things with low-hanging leaves. Each misplaced stick becomes a beast, but where is your monster? Your breath is uneven and bile bites at your throat. Pensive, you stop, almost doubled over as you catch your breath. Your eyes water. It's then that you realize your foolishness. There's a reason the mayor ordered you to skirt the cliff sides. You chased the monster into its home. In the forest, where it could lurk behind any trees, launch itself from above, dance with misplaced sticks. There are eyes on your back, on your chest. What was that mother said about the forest? That you needed a trail of breadcrumbs to find a way out? Do monsters eat breadcrumbs? You should have stayed at home when mother would break bread. A branch cracks. There's a creature moving towards you through the woods. Eyes straight, head high, aim the gun, and... Monsters are vicious, the mayor told you. So unlike you and me. But you must bury them, because they know how to burn the land. The monster meets your eyes. He switched fangs for round teeth, his horns for sandy hair, his wings for shabby and ripped clothing. Hands raised above his head, the monster resembles a man, maybe a few years older than you. His eyes are wide and frightened. His lips move and strange words come out. Odd, it sounds like a language. No, he is a monster, not a being of smooth dialect. Point the gun, straighten your shoulders, and watch as red blood blossoms out of his chest. It sprays out of him in ribbons. His back arcs, mouth agape, and for a moment you hear the breath leave his chest. Then he collapses. The monsters do not look like us, the mayor grinned. Give them a quick death. But this man looks like you. Remorse splatters into your gut, curling around your throat and squeezing at your tongue. There's red blood in your shoes, in your hair. You find yourself kneeling in the dirt. His body looks like a doll, his limbs rubbery and curled under him as if discarded by an overactive toddler. So you should tell the village, shouldn't you? Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll go back home to bed, to mother where it's safe. Where there are no dying men, where you can imagine this was all a dream. There's a protest on your lips and fear in your pocket and a gun still sitting in your lap. And there's blood on your hands. Aren't you righteous?
Thank you so much, Maddie, and we hope you enjoy your stay in the Riverland. That's all we have for you this evening. But before you all go, I would like to thank everyone that supported us in this event. So Country Arts SA, the Chaffey Theatre team, and the Rise Fund. And if Miscellany is something you enjoyed, please join us in our potluck open mic. Talk to Jess if you would like to get in touch. Keep an eye out for Writers SA's Q3 program launch, and just check it out for future Riverland events, workshops and opportunities. A final round of applause for our storytellers. Thank you all for coming tonight and supporting us. If you have any ideas or for future projects, please go to Kirste. And everyone, stay safe and have a good night.